Breaking news, Raiders fans. The Las Vegas Raiders just wrapped up their very first open practice since Saturday's preseason game against the San Francisco 49ers, and we've got some big updates from camp. Some players are stepping up and earning more first-team reps, while others are returning from injuries. And today, the spotlight is on one very important player, right guard Alex Cappa. After being sidelined, Cappa finally returned to practice, working with the second-team unit. Now, this is a huge development for the Raiders because he's a veteran, paid $11 million over the next 2 seasons, and he has the potential to lock down the right guard spot. His presence could also shift Jackson Paris Johnson back to his natural center position. But before we dive deeper into this news, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the latest Raiders updates. Now let's jump back in. Yesterday, we talked about Jordan Meredith's performance against the 49ers. He had some strong plays, but also struggled with missed blocks. With Kappa back, the Raiders now get a chance to evaluate if he's truly starter material, and he might even suit up against the Arizona Cardinals. I could see him starting at right guard and playing the first half, which would finally give us a clear look at what he brings to the table. The situation is interesting. Meredith wasn't even in the running at first, but when the Raiders shifted Paris Johnson to guard, Meredith suddenly started getting first-team snaps. That move raised some questions. Are the Raiders really confident in Alex Cappa? In fact, Raider legend Lincoln Kennedy recently suggested that there's a real chance Cappa might not even make the final roster. And hearing that from a former Pro Bowl tackle carries some serious weight. Lincoln Kennedy recently made a bold statement about Alex Kappa's future with the Raiders. He basically said, "I'm done waiting for him. If you're hurt, I respect that, but football doesn't stop. We need players on the field, not just guys holding clipboards." In other words, Kennedy believes the team might just move on from Kappa altogether. Now, I've got to be honest, I don't agree with that take. Here's why. If you cut ties with Alex Cappa, who are you really left with? Right now, the starters could be Jordan Meredith and Jackson Paris Johnson, but then what's the depth behind them? Rookie Caleb Rogers has flashed some potential, sure, but after him the options thin out quickly. You'd be relying on guys like Jared Hufford, who is completely unproven, or Will Putnam, who might not even make the final roster. That's risky business for a long NFL season. Truth is, offensive line depth is critical, and you can never have too many guards. On top of that, the Raiders already guaranteed Kappa around $6 million this year. That means even if he doesn't win a starting spot, at worst, you have one of the most experienced backup linemen in the league sitting on your bench. So unless Kappa comes back and looks completely washed, I think it would be a mistake to cut him loose. He still has value, whether as a starter or a high-quality insurance policy. One thing you never want to do as a team is end up short-handed on the offensive line. Imagine losing 2 guards to injury and then scrambling to sign a veteran for a couple $1 million when you already had Alex Cappa under contract. That's why, even if he doesn't start, keeping him makes sense. Now looking at the current lineup, it really feels like Jordan Meredith and Jackson Paris Johnson are locking down the center and right guard spots. Even Pete Carroll hinted at this recently, praising Meredith's growth and saying he liked him in that role. Reading between the lines, it sounds like Meredith has earned his place, and Paris Johnson is almost a lock at guard. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Let's talk about the other position battles. At wide receiver, the picture is becoming clearer. Dante Thornton is officially a starter now, and there's no longer any real debate about it. Jack Beck won't see the field unless someone like Yokobe Meyers or Trey Tucker needs a breather. Realistically, Tucker and Myers are the top 2, Thornton slides in as the third option, and Beck is fighting for snaps as the fourth. Honestly, you could even argue he might slip further down the depth chart depending on how the preseason wraps up. That means when the Raiders run 12 personnel with Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer at tight end, expect to see Tucker and Myers as the receivers. Thornton will rotate in, but Beck will only see limited opportunities. In other words, the wide receiver room is basically locked. The real intrigue, though, is happening at cornerback. Going into the offseason, it seemed like Eric Stokes and Darian Porter were the unquestioned starters. But lately, Porter has had serious competition pushing him for that role, and that battle could shape the secondary in a big way. The cornerback battle in camp has been one of the most fascinating storylines to follow. Early on, Corian Bennett and Sam Webb were rotating with Darian Porter for that starting role opposite Eric Stokes. But lately, new faces have entered the fight. Damaron Richardson, J.T. Woods, and most surprisingly, Q Blue Kelly have all been given chances with the first-team defense. And here's where things get really interesting. Reports out of practice say that Kelly is starting to separate himself from the pack. While Porter and Kelly both rotated with the starters, Kelly took all his snaps with the first-team unit, while Porter also slid in with the second team. That's usually a sign the coaching staff is testing one guy as a potential starter while easing the other into a backup role. As it stands right now, Eric Stokes is locked in on the left side. That job isn't changing. But on the right side, it's wide open. Kelly seems to be pulling ahead, while Porter's grip on the spot is slipping just a little. Behind them, J.T. Woods looks to be climbing ahead of Richardson, who's been mostly running with the third stringers. Still, nothing's set in stone. Young corners always go through growing pains. Maybe Kelly wins the job now, but if he gives up a big play or struggles in a game, Porter could get his shot right back. Same the other way around, Porter might start, but if he slips, Kelly will be waiting. What's worth remembering here is that Pete Carroll believed in Q Blue Kelly enough to bring him in for this competition. That move wasn't by accident, and now it looks like Kelly has a real chance to reward that trust. 2 years ago, Pete Carroll brought Q Blue Kelly into Seattle because he believed the kid fit perfectly in his system. The Seahawks eventually had to release him for roster space, but Carroll never forgot about him, and now he's giving him another shot with the Raiders. But here's the thing about young corners. Talent alone isn't enough. You can't just throw a rookie onto the field if he doesn't fully understand the playbook. Take something as simple as cover 3. It's not just standing in your zone and waiting. There are layers of rules built into every coverage. For example, if the offense lines up with 3 wideouts on your side, your assignment can change instantly depending on their routes. If the inside receiver cuts deep, you might need to carry him. If the outside receiver runs a post, you may pick that up instead, but only to a certain depth before handing it off. Then throw in motion, shifting from a 3 multiplied by 1 look to a 2 multiplied by 2, and suddenly your responsibility flips completely. That's a lot for a rookie to process in real time. And this isn't new. We saw the same thing with Yokobe Bennett last year. In training camp, he looked like a star, making plays all over the field. But when week 1 came around, the coaches went with Amick Robertson instead. Why? Because Bennett just wasn't quite ready. The speed of the game was overwhelming. Eventually, Bennett grew into the role and even took over as a starter, but it took time. That's why with Darian Porter or even Kelly, not starting right away doesn't mean they've failed. It just means the coaches want the game to slow down for them before handing them the keys. And let's be honest, with how long an NFL season is, chances are one of these young corners will end up getting their shots sooner rather than later. Raiders fans, here's a practice update that really caught my attention. Reporter Levi Edwards shared that Q Blue Kelly had one of the best reps of the day, locking up Dante Thornton in a one-on-one and breaking up a perfectly thrown pass from Geno Smith. Now let's be real, one-on-one drills almost always favor the wide receiver. The corner is backpedaling, has no safety help, and the quarterback knows it's a pass. It's like putting an offensive lineman in a pass rush drill. The defender has every advantage. So when a young corner like Kelly steps up and makes a play in that situation, it says a lot about his ability. Watching him on tape, you can see his length and quick reaction time. Sure, he gave up a couple catches, but that happens when you only see 10 to 15 snaps. In a real game, once a corner recognizes a route concept, he adjusts. The same play won't beat him over and over. That's why I want to see Kelly tested in live action, not just in short camp reps. But Kelly wasn't the only storyline. Another big topic making noise, Yokobe Meyers. There's been some speculation that he could be on the trade block. With the Raiders stacked at wide receiver, some believe he's a valuable asset the team might flip if they need help elsewhere. Meyers himself spoke about his contract situation recently. He wasn't negative, but you could tell he wants stability. He wants to stay in Vegas long term. The tricky part? The Raiders may have already drafted someone with his skill set. Jack Beck is a very similar style of receiver, only faster and a little longer. Meyers is the more polished player today, but you can't ignore the similarities. It raises the question, are the Raiders preparing for life after Meyers? When you look at the Raiders' wide receiver room, one big question keeps coming up. What happens with Yokobe Meyers? Last time he signed with Vegas, it was for around $11 million a year, a bargain compared to the production he gave. But after another strong season, his price tag is only going up. Are we talking $16 million a year? $20 million? Maybe even more if another team with cap space comes calling. And let's be honest, there's always a franchise out there willing to overpay when they need weapons. That's where things get tricky. The Raiders already have money tied up in several short-term deals and looming extensions, players like Elandon Roberts, Jermaine Pratt, Jamal Adams, even young pieces on shorter contracts. You can't keep everyone, and big numbers for Meyers could mean losing depth elsewhere. At the same time, the front office has clearly been thinking ahead. Drafting Jack Beck, who plays a lot like Meyers, feels intentional. And if Dante Thornton truly breaks out this year, let's say he's being talked about as a top 15 receiver by midseason, then suddenly you've got a core of Thornton, Brock Bowers, and Ashton Genty. Add Beck developing in the background, and you might feel confident moving forward without paying another $17 minus $20 million at wideout. Now, personally, I'd love to see Meyers stay. He's steady, reliable, and has proven chemistry with this offense. But the business side matters. With $7 million already sitting in dead cap for him over the next 2 years, you'd be stacking new money on top of that if you re-sign him. That's not a small detail. The good news? The Raiders have young guys ready to step in if they need to. The bad news? Letting a proven playmaker walk is always a gamble. So here's the real question, Raider Nation. Do you pay up to keep a sure thing or trust the young guns to take over?